Hello, I'm Errol Alkan. Welcome to my studio. I'm going to play you the stems, parts, production, instrumentation, recording, performances of 3 songs that I've been involved with over the last year. Late It Appears, Bar from Gurgle, Century by the Long Blondes, and Two Doors Down by the Mystery Jets. First track I'm going to go through is Bar from Gurgle by Late of the Pier, which is which we did in I think April and May last year, 2007, and it was before they were signed. It was before like much of the hype, and it was a pretty exciting session for me, in the way that there was a band who hadn't really kind of been in a studio before, and kind of wanted to keep it kind of exciting and fresh for them, and not it be just to be fun, I suppose, in a nutshell. The first thing that struck us when we were like setting up the drums was that their kit, or the equipment that they had, wasn't anything that like I'd kind of used in a studio environment before. Much in the way of, I suppose, the best way of putting it was that their drum kit looked like it was falling apart. Their instruments would have been, I suppose, to some people, could have very easily been sneered upon. Sam plays like, I think it's a vintage make guitar, like a kind of SG copy, and Faley's bass, I can't remember what make it was now, but they're kind of like the kind of things that you would find in a kind of, this is not dissing it, but the kind of places that you'd find in like a cheap rehearsal room. It wasn't like how many people want to have Fenders and Gibsons and stuff like that. But the first rule was that the band were kind of comfortable and happy playing those instruments, so that's what we went with, instead of kind of hiring in kind of expensive equipment. Or even, I kind of brought a few of my things along. I always like take guitars and stuff like that along to sessions if the band wants to use it, but I never force it upon them. If someone's comfortable playing something, I think what you're going to get out of it is going to be far greater than if you actually kind of have this guitar, this expensive guitar, which arguably does sound beautiful. I very much always take what the artist is more comfortable playing. The first thing that struck us was when we mic'd up the drum kit, and we only used like 5 mics on it, because there was only a kick, snare, there was a floor tom which we actually overdubbed, and the hi-hats which we overdubbed as well. We just used just 5 mics, I think it was, on there, just like that great big pterodactyl looking Coles mic at the front, and then just I think it was like an NS10 on the kick with a D112 or something, and like usual snare drum miking malarkey. But the one thing that struck us was actually how good this kind of kit, which looks like it was going to fall apart, sounded. So I kind of solo it, you'll get the idea. I don't really know if you're going to... Actually, no, I can't, because that's been heavily processed since. But later on in the track, you'll get it. Maybe around here. It's been heavily processed since then. These are like the stems from the mix, but basically they sounded great, so we kind of just went with what they had. As you can probably hear in the background, like the band all played live to it, and we just did a few overdubs. This is a snare overdub which we did. Also, I should kind of let you know that the original session of this disappeared when a hard drive blew up, and and so we had to kind of go back to the studio, kind of how it left the studio, and kind of rebuild it from there again. But we kind of like reamped a load of kicks and snares because we weren't particularly happy with the kicks and the snares on the original Moshi version. So we added a bit more snare to it to give it more whack. There's like loads of floor tom overdubs, which give it that really big boomy vibe. Like that. And earlier on we did the same thing with hi-hats, overdubbed. Slowly creeping up. What else we got? Bass. Fairly like can sometimes be the one take wonder, and I remember he put this bass down like just in the control room, just sitting down next to us.
So is it just DI'd?
No, this is we always DI it. We always DI the bass, obviously, and you know, with a view to possibly reamping it depending on just how tall like the track ends up sounding. But on this occasion, I can't remember what amp he had. He had like a really kind of what was it? I can't even remember what it was. Yeah, I can't recall at all what it was. But I think on this one we may have reamped it later for this version. We used a Trace Elliot and a Selma in the studio when we were making the album. So we'd kind of like reamp or use those depending on what we wanted for the track. Always through like a kind of 4x12 cab. This is his bass line. Just mute all those. Just doubled up on a CS15. Playing the CS15. Actually, fast forward you to my favourite part of the track, which is around here, I think.
Why is it your favourite part?
I think Fairley just completely just went for it on the bass, and then Potter came out with this almost like extraterrestrial kind of synth noise right here. I'll give you a kick as well so you kind of follow it.
Still CS15?
Yeah. Sounds like a voice or something, it's great. It's a bit bizarre.
So what was the processing side of things like the bass and the drums?
Bass, well, apart from the DI and the kind of amp miking, it was pretty straightforward actually on that. For the bass, the CS, I mean, with a lot of synths and stuff, we usually like pop them out for an amp and stuff, just depending on how you want it to kind of sit into the mix. It sounded like Space in the Woods. We did like because that was like the kind of the central part of the track. The synth line and that was processed loads. You know, did lots and lots of different types of reamping on it, and at some points, literally just kind of like had like the actual reamp sound. More prominent than the dry kind of synth sound, just simply because it was just kind of making the air move in a really kind of magical way, you know. that's always what I tend to find when you stick things through amps, is if it's going to make, you know, how that's going to just kind of like glide across all the other sounds in something, you know what I mean?
So there's no edits here as such in Pro Tools?
On here,
Yeah.
when we're doing the takes,
Yeah.
this is like obviously like the stems and stuff, but with regards to comping things down, yeah, obviously, you know, we'll do like, for like a bass take or something like that, or especially for like vocal takes and stuff, you'll do comps, you know. But I tend to kind of like, we try not to kind of overdo things, you know, like having like if you're up to like take 16 and you haven't got what you've wanted, then it might be an idea to take a break, more so than take another take, you know. Tend to find that within usually the first 3 or 4 takes, you usually get what you want, you know. It tends to come like, you know, like the best kind of stuff happens around then. But with some of the, you know, the bass and the CS15, sometimes, you know, like there has been a little bit of shifting about, but actually not that much. There's also MPC stuff that was triggered off the MPC on the bass line as well. I think. Actually, this is the stomps part, which is just bounced onto that track as well. This is Sam on a Juno, just accentuating on the drums. I remember this was like amped, definitely reamped.
What were the main synths on the album then, the CS15?
Oh, on the Later Pier album, we used a lot of CS synths, like, well, I mean the 10 and the 15. I've got the 10 and the band have got the 15. That was used. A lot of Roland stuff, the Juno 6, the Jupiter was used loads. Promars as well. Don't know if you ever know one of those. They sound incredible. Really, really, really good.
So was that mainly a mixture of your gear and the band gear? Or
Yeah,
or
totally. It was a big mixture of stuff.
So what was this recorded at in Pro Tools, 2496 or?
Yeah. This is all. No, I don't think this was. I don't think this was 96 actually. Might have been 44, 24, 44. Okay. I mean, tend to kind of like now, you know, everything will be 2496. Definitely.
Has that been a big difference for you in the years?
I think you kind of only realise it like later on down the line, you know, when you're kind of mixing stuff and you really kind of, especially when you're brightening sounds up,
yep.
You tend to notice it like right at the top end, you know, when it kind of like, you know, how kind of sounds can open up in that way, you know. But I suppose, you know, it's kind of now because everything's just so much faster and you can store so much information now and it can be read so fast that that I suppose there's no point kind of doing it on anything less really, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. I kind of like, I mean, you know, when I done this is probably only like it's one of the earliest sessions that I did with a band as well, so didn't really kind of like think that far ahead in the way of like, you know, let's we need to do it a certain way.
What about I mean these are stems but they've been processed, what kind of, is it mainly outboard processing or
yeah,
a lot of plugins or?
Mainly the main plugins that tend to use on things are like EQs and the Pro Tools compressor, you know, kind of tend to use that quite a lot. Just to kind of like keep, you know, some things, like especially when I'm doing stuff in, you know, here. This was actually the first mix of that was mixed in here, so they tend to use that. In the studio though, it's, you know, it's the kind of usual fare of SSL, DBX, you know, LA2s.
How are you finding the SSLs? We've had conversations before that you thought.
Yeah, I kind of at first I hated SSL compressors because just how kind of like, but I just wasn't using them in the right way, in the most effective way, and I'll be the first to admit that. But I kind of hated the way how they could make things just sound really, really radio-y and, you know, and thin. But like, that was my kind of problem that I had with that. But I've since learned how to kind of adapt to it and use it in a way which kind of I find far more exciting. Definitely, I mean, you know, that when it comes to adding punch to something, they're second to none, you know. But they just got to be used in the right way, otherwise they can like suck the life out of something if they're done wrong, you know. But yeah, we used like an SSL and a Mustafa SSL 4000, the compressor which is obviously a copy of the SSL loads on the album. I mean, it was either that. It was mainly that the main compression on Let It Appear album was either the Mustafa SSL 4000, an SSL, and a Tube Tech running in parallel, kind of making everything just pump and pulse and stuff. I find the Tube Techs to be like just great for adding that vibe to it, you know.
So can we maybe hear the vocal and talk about what was processed on that?
Definitely. Let's go try and find the some of these, which are my favourites. The HS3000, pretty much, I think, when we stuck that on into this track, that basically started really giving the record its atmosphere. This is like... This is kind of But then we added all this into part of the vocal and into like the organs. Just some other little incidentals and stuff. Finding the right reverb is, or kind of like understanding the part to find the right reverb is always like, it's quite a lot of fun. I really enjoy doing it, but it can be quite a kind of challenge. Like sometimes a really cheap, shitty reverb can kind of be what you want, and sometimes you have to go for something really posh or kind of like use, you know, start getting involved with the plate at the studio or, you know, anything like that. But it's great when, you know, when you switch something on, like as we did with the HS3000, just whacked it on and then it just completely opened the track up and almost kind of like influenced like more of that kind of big, I don't know what you want to call it, it's kind of almost like the Queen moment, but when you just take like the components of that section, which are these, kind of led the way for much of the track to kind of...
So do you tend to use the same reverb in different amounts on different elements to give it a...
Like to tie things in together?
Yeah.
Sometimes, yeah, I suppose, looking back on it, yeah, you do. I tend to try and, you know, like vary things as well in a track. You know, I mean, I tend to find out things like, you know, when you're reamping stuff and you kind of like... you kind of like, you know, make like, you know, you obviously put, you know, some mics on the guitar and stuff, like maybe behind the guitar, and taking a room as well. I mean, obviously you're creating some type of reverb by doing that, you know.
And that ties it together, you think?
I don't know if it does actually naturally tie it together, but phone. But it does. I mean, for me, it does kind of give the track, you know, each thing, it's kind of some kind of space in the track. Do you know what I mean? You know, definitely with reamping things, it's easier to make something sit into a mix and make it feel a little more natural. But you are, like, in the way of kind of experiencing a track and it having a landscape, you know, I don't kind of necessarily try and force it to be all part of and the same, you know, kind of ambience wise across a track. I find it a bit more interesting sometimes if you feel a little bit closed in and then a lot more open, or for it to be wider or like totally mono at points, you know. I find that kind of quite interesting at times.
So how do you go? I mean, have you got conventional methods about where you place stuff in the stereo image, or?
Oh yeah, now I do. Yeah, at first when I was mixing stuff in here, and this is a really important thing about kind of about home kind of mixing or home recording, is if you've got a room like this, which is a square room, and there's a lot of reflections, your whole stereo image is completely like misleading. You know, like what might sound stereo and exciting in here, once you take it out, it can sound completely flat and kind of just really, really mono. When we were mixing much of this in Strong Rooms 1, which is a room that I really, really like, you know, you had a really, really true idea of the image, of the depth of the image as well, you know, and that made it a lot more exciting to kind of mix, because you could place things like, you know, like you know, the way I kind of like create things in stereo, obviously using a lot of like kind of sample delay and stuff from left to the right, you could actually hear a noticeable difference whether or not you're actually kind of delaying something by 10 milliseconds or 20 or 30 milliseconds, you know, and that's like creating more of an exciting stereo image. That was quite a revelation, and it's something that, coming out of working in a room like that and coming back into a room like this, you actually you're a lot more kind of aware of it. You know what I mean? It's sort
so
of
it helps
like,
you learn your own room a lot more.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. And also, you know, now I'd kind of probably overmix in here, knowing that this room is kind of like, you know, is an exciting sounding room, but once stuff leaves out of here, it's not as exciting. So yeah. Again, you know, like with some things, like creating stereo imaging through miking as well, you know, reamping stuff in rooms and mic placement, and obviously distance, you know, between the mics and stuff, creating a sense of kind of stereo in that way. The really good thing I'm really happy about the Late Appear album is through mixing that, like we really pushed like what happens in the mix. You know what I mean? For us, you know, we kind of like overdid it at times, you know, with stuff kind of like flying about and then actually being like completely wide at one moment and then like that the next, you know. So it's quite an exciting like mix as well, I think, right across the album. If I was to go to the vocals, which I think it was one of the best vocals Sam has put down across the record, I'll go straight to the kind of the big Queen bit. I'll drop the reverb in that as well, so I was like, I can find it. It'll be in the HS3000 channel, which is bounced with some of the synth. This is Sam in big falsetto action. That was basically we used a Lomo mic on that, which they had hanging around the studio, and it just looked great, and put it up, and that went through a Neve preamp, but really, 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 really spanked, like really, like probably overdriv it a fair bit. It just sounded really exciting, like with his voice. It just kind of, his voice just resonated so well, like with that combination of microphone and that preamp. I don't know what kind of, like, you might actually push the EQ a little bit on the Neve as well, just to give it that kind of snap. You know? I found that by doing that, actually, like, that he kind of sung really into the sound. Do you know what I mean? I think that's really important when you kind of, when you're recording, is if you can find that the sound that's going to accentuate the feel that the vocalist wants to kind of achieve, then they're going to find it far easier to kind of to get into it and actually deliver the performance you're looking for. I mean, I think this bit is remarkable. His vocal here.
So put your hands on your waistline and move your body to the baseline and get your hands on your T-point and get out like a motherfucking child with your high point to define moving and motherfucking beast if it's define grooving and want a piece of me if it's the father street if it's the father world if it's so damn feeling sad.
You can hear she stomping along to the track. Just
with the fires of the beast, beat the fine streets in the middle, fucking race, the fall at the fire feast, fire in the middle, you feel it at the shell, you feel it at the fire, falls in violent fire.
no idea what he's singing though.
You could really hear that overdriving there.
On the preamp. Yeah, it's like Spank. But that's the thing. I think it was kind of, he was singing into it. Like, it was always there, but at certain points, you know, I think it's really good for vocalists when they know that they can kind of hit it into the red, but they hold back, but they know that point when to do it. It's almost like kind of self-production in a way. Do you know what I mean? When you give somebody the kind of the freedom, you know, to kind of hit it really hard if they need to, they'll know instinctively, you know, when to do that and how to do that, and they will also put it into the character of the vocal, you know. So it's like it hits it on every level. It's not like, it's almost like self-automation or something, you know. I think that this was the only track that we ended up using, the Lomo, and after that we ended up using the Neumann, the 49, or there was like this other one as well. It's a really dead rare, expensive one whose name escapes me all the time. Yeah, I mean, you know, Sam's a vocalist who tends to sound really good on whatever kind of mic you put up in front of him, especially if it's you know, one of the more expressive microphones. You know, it really it tends to pick up like a lot of the. I mean, he has so much character in his vocal, and his ability to kind of switch vocal styles. You know, the drop of a hat.